I've heard it so many times on your show. Are we this close? We're this close to civil war. It's right around the corner, ladies and gentlemen. And the real question is, what will happen when the civil war gets here? I haven't seen the Civil War, Tim. I'm going to be honest with you, and it doesn't look to me like the political will is there to do it. Now, January 6th people went quietly into the night, and nobody's really saying much about that either.
So the first thing I'll say academically is I don't know if you've ever actually read history books. Perhaps a guy like me read? Yes, I've read history books. And so when you read articles specifically about various historical periods, you realize that we condense it in our history books. And so when we talk about the rise of Hitler, people tend to forget that it's like 20 years through Weimar Germany leading up to this point where this guy rises to power. And so
conditions were set for the Weimar Republic. We had massive inflation.
I think you're either being purposefully obtuse or you cannot comprehend basic facts.
Tim Pool absolutely lost his mind on one of his guests, Andrew Wilson, because Andrew Wilson criticized Tim Pool and his Civil War rhetoric. Let's get into this clip here from Timcast, where, like I said, Tim Pool loses his mind on his guest on Timcast, Andrew Wilson, for criticizing his Civil War rhetoric. And if you don't know what his Civil War rhetoric is, Tim Pool cries World War III and Civil War all the time. And I'm a fan of Tim Pool. I like what he does. But that rhetoric is, I think, a little bit over the top at times. But let's get into what Tim Pool's response is to Andrew Wilson here live on Timcast.
Look back on this broadcast later. Come November, chances are good. Trump gets in. I mean, not Trump, Biden gets in. And Trump supporters don't really do anything. He concedes. And that's probably how it's going to go.
Again, I think you live in a movie. I think you think doing something is a guy standing up and saying, I hereby declare, instead of 7 guys going out and being like, hey, can we make sure that any of those trucks coming in don't have the illegals? Because we've had a couple trucks come through here that did, and they've been transporting them. Now, I tried calling ICE, but they won't answer. So Jim and I are going to go out.
Don't consider that a civil war. Just that would be low-scale vigilanteism. So,
right. And what precipitates civil war?
It would have to be some large segment of the population, that 5% or higher, who are doing some type of sedition or considerable treason, what would be considered considerable treason to the United States government. That would be, that is what I would consider to be some type of actionable civil warfare.
Just 5%?
Yeah, 10%.
What is it, 60%? 60%? No, it's like 70% of the Republicans think that the Democrats have already committed sedition.
Yeah, I'm sure that they do.
Right,
but
so
they're not acting in a way as though they have.
I think
that's the problem, right? If you think that somebody has truly acted in a way as to be a traitor, right? What do you do to traitors?
Sedition and treason are two different things.
Yeah, I know. But if you were to say that you think a person's acting in such a way that they're a traitor, what do you do to traitors? Last I checked, they get hung, right?
But treason and sedition are not the same thing.
Yeah, I know. But the point of my hypothetical is to say they're not acting in such a way as though these people, while they say you're seditious or they say you're treasonous, whichever one, they're not acting as though they are. They might say it, but they're not acting like it.
What does that mean they're not acting like it?
Well, if somebody is guilty of sedition, that's firing squad. If they're guilty of treason, they get hung.
Sedition is not.
They don't get worked with.
Sedition is like maximum 10 years in prison, I believe.
Okay, fine. Well, they're not getting 10 years in prison either. But
well, that's the question of whether Donald Trump gets elected. The issue is conservatives overwhelmingly they're not revolutionaries. The question is, do we expect, with everything that's already happened, we're at the point now where since the beginning of this conversation with Donald Trump, they've accused the president of being a traitor. They've accused Donald Trump of being a traitor.
That's true.
They have acted as though he is a traitor. They have.
Yeah, and I am 100% convinced. I agree with Tim Pool here, actually, 100%. I'm convinced that if the Democratic candidate was treated the same way that Donald Trump was treated, we would be in a civil war already. We would already be going through that. There would, because the left, as Tim Pool just said, conservatives are just that. Conservatives are conservative. They're not revolutionaries, like Tim Pool said. Whereas if you look at the left, and like when the left views that there have been quote unquote injustices done to them, they burn down cities. We saw that back in 2020. They literally burn down cities. They have a lot of groups within the left wing that are extremist groups, and they do things like that. You see what the left does all the time. They are revolutionaries. They do go into art museums and just destroy art, expensive art, in the name of climate change awareness or whatever the hell they do. So they are like that. And I believe that if the left wing, if the Democratic candidate was treated the same way that Donald Trump was treated, we would be in a civil war already. I agree with Tim Pool there.
They cemented his feet so that he couldn't run his administration. They effectively levied legal war against him during his entire administration.
But you need a percentage of the American public who's acting in accordance with that against the system.
No.
In a physical way.
Wrong.
I don't think that's wrong.
Read a book.
I mean, just saying.
Every single instance
just saying,
of social...
5 guys are running around with guns in some small scale incursion. That's not fucking civil war.
Didn't say it was civil war.
Well, that's what we're talking about, is civil unrest and civil war.
And what precipitates that is social breakdown when people lose confidence in their government.
I agree. That's what precipitates it. That's true. You have social breakdown. You have social cohesion breaking down.
You're sitting here going...
But that doesn't mean that that's what it is. And you can also, you know what else you can get? Instead of civil war, you can get... instead of revolution, instead of civil war, you can have a renaissance too. Sometimes social breakdowns lead to renaissance. You forget about that as well.
Well, usually you get a revolution or you get a civil war. Civil wars will end with one power structure typically takes over. The outright destruction is rare. Someone always asserts authority. But you get a revolution when no one fights, or you get a civil war when someone decides to fight back. What we could experience is a communist revolution in the United States.
You could.
If the right does nothing. We are facing an election where we already know from 2020 no one will agree on the results. To then say, after this election...
If you enjoy content like this, to make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
And everything will be fine, I believe, is absurdity.
Okay, so
I agree. I can't believe I'm saying this.
So I'll say this. I'll say this. No, I still have to disagree. This has been going on for years and years, where the American government has prepared for contingencies for civil war. This has been going on forever. And to be honest with you, Tim, you've been talking about the Civil War since long before I even got into online politics. I was listening to you talk about, hey, this is right around the corner. It's coming soon to a theater near you. The stage is set. We're very close to it. And we weren't really that close to it. So the thing is like...
Do you think January 6th wasn't a dramatic escalation of political violence?
I think that you could have a lead up over many years. Over many years.
So I was correct. What did the SPLC accuse me of?
What do you mean? When did you predict Jan 6?
In September. Oh, I love this because it's in the lawsuits against me too. SPLC's written about it because in like September of or it might have been August of 2020, I said, if Donald Trump loses, you're going to see dudes showing up in D.C. They're going to lose their mind and storm the White House or something because they are not going to accept this. You're right. It wasn't the White House. It was the Capitol building. And then they wrote, Tim Pool had foreknowledge of January 6th, and here's proof because he predicted. No, it's because I...
See, the problem with this, though, is that Tim Pool, he was correct about that. But the thing is with Tim Pool is he brings it to a new level. He hyperbolizes, if that's even a word. He hyperbolizes the whole thing where it's like, Civil War is coming, World War III is coming. And it got to a certain point where I literally just had to stop watching Timcast because I felt like there was a point in time where I was so into politics and so into learning about all this stuff that I was watching Timcast like every night. I was going to the gym every night and I would listen to Timcast while I was there. And then during the time when Russia invaded Ukraine, it just got to the point where like every single day Tim Pool was talking about like, we're on the brink of nuclear warfare. The entire world could end soon. And that was all they talked about every show. I had to stop watching because I was like, dude, you're like giving me anxiety every day. Like I understand the tactic and everything, but damn, like I need to be able to live in some peace every once in a while. And watching his stuff and also at the same time, it trained me because of how much, and it's not just Tim Pool's fault. Everybody does that stuff, right? Everybody uses those tactics to get views and stuff. But it trained me to be like, I'm one of the nothing ever happens bros now, where it's like, everybody was telling me, Tim Pool included, that World War III is coming, World War III is coming. And I was literally like scared every day that I was going to get nuked because of that. And then everybody's saying, oh, Civil War is coming, Civil War is coming. Every single time something happens, back in 2020 with the riots and J6, everybody's saying Civil War, they're trying to overthrow the government, overthrow democracy, all this stuff. And then nothing ever happens, ever. So now I'm part of this group where it's like, every single time somebody says it's going to happen, something's going to happen, World War III, Civil War, whatever, I'm always just like, no, it's not. Like literally nothing ever happens, ever. And they always say that the worst is going to happen. So that's another problem with the rhetoric of like, Civil War is coming soon. I understand he's making a prediction. Tim Pool genuinely believes that a Civil War is coming soon. But there's a problem with that. Whenever it doesn't happen repeatedly, people stop taking it seriously.
read. And I said, wow, based on everything these people are saying and preparing for, they're going to go to DC and do something like this. And then they did.
Yeah, but I think if you say that the sky is falling enough times, just like Alex Jones, eventually a couple of those things are correct.
In 2018, when I said escalation of political violence is going to reach a massive tipping point, and then in 2020, they firebombed St. John's Church and the White House grounds, and they took over numerous cities, I predicted that. So to say, you've been saying for a long time it's around the corner, and every time you say something's going to happen, it does, but you're still wrong. Dude, I don't care if I'm wrong.
Well, it's not every time you say it that it doesn't happen. What I'm saying is that you've made the prediction so many times. I've heard it so many times on your show. Are we this close? We're this close to civil war. It's right around the corner, ladies and gentlemen. And the real question is, what will happen when the civil war gets here? I haven't seen the Civil War, Tim. I'm going to be honest with you, and it doesn't look to me like the political will is there to do it. Now, the January 6th people went quietly into the night, and nobody's really saying much about that either.
So the first thing I'll say academically is, I don't know if you've ever actually read history books. Perhaps a
guy like me read? Yes, I've read history books. And
so when you read articles specifically about various historical periods, you realize that we condense it in our history books. And so when we talk about the rise of Hitler, people tend to forget that it's like 20 years through Weimar Germany leading up to this point where this guy rises to power. And so
the conditions were set for the Weimar Republic. We had massive inflation.
I think you're either being purposefully obtuse or you cannot comprehend basic facts.
Well,
and the intentional being intentionally obtuse is to say, I recognize that many different academics have predicted civil war, state that we're in civil strife. You said political violence is going to escalate. The summer of love did happen. You said in 2020 that a bunch of angry Trump supporters are going to go to DC and storm, the White House. It wasn't the White House, it was the Capitol building. You got that one right. And you've been warning about how these things lead to each other. And now today, as of today, because the civil war didn't kick off at any of those time periods, you've been wrong to predict these things are escalating. The first thing is, when I say, hey, look, here's a guy who said this thing is happening, that's not me predicting it. That's saying a Princeton professor has made this prediction. A former CIA official has made this prediction. Numerous security advisors have made this prediction. Canada is saying it's improbable. So it's not necessarily a prediction, but they're concerned about its potentiality. Investors are now making this prediction. We are in civil strife. I'm not making that up, nor am I predicting it. I'm saying that's an assessment of leaders in politics, infrastructure, and culture.
Yeah, it's a prediction as well of intelligence agencies that could very well, just throwing it out there, not saying this is actually like an Alex Jones crazy conspiracy theory, right? Like there's no way this is the case, right? But the people, this is what these other crazy guys are saying, right? I would never say anything like this, but the people who are predicting this, who are part of these intelligence agencies, could also be behind the civil strife, the civil unrest, the possible civil war. They could probably, just saying, crazy conspiracy theory out there, they could probably want that to happen. Like those crazy idiots, those lunatics over there, that's what they're saying. Like the people who run the CIA and everything, who are making these predictions, like they're saying that they want this to happen, right? Absolutely crazy. Like the CIA would never do anything like that, right? Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this argument from Tim Pool here and Andrew Wilson on Timcast. Is very interesting because I agree with Andrew Wilson on a lot of things, but at the same time, Tim Pool has been correct on some predictions. Who do you guys think won this debate? Let me know in the comments what you think about this debate here between Tim Pool and Andrew Wilson live on Timcast.